setting the context and begin with our first question. What are the soft risks involved in volunteer engagement and management at your nonprofit? How would you identify them? Uh, Sakib, you can take this up.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya, for such a warm introduction. I think like that's a solid question to start the webinar with as well, especially for the organization that work with volunteer for critical delivery of services, right? And Make a Difference is one such organization that actually mobilizes young leaders to ensure equitable outcomes for children in need of care and protection. In fact, if you look at it, all the critical delivery of services is done by volunteers, which in turn in a lot of ways is also subsidizing the organization operating cost, making it hyper lean. And Just when I'm thinking about it, I realized that the actual cost of running the organization at the current scale would be about somewhere between 80 to 100 crores. But because of the volunteering model, we have been able to keep it hyper lean and carry out our operations with a similar impact and manage it within 10 crores on an annual basis, which also includes the beneficiary cost, which is the maximum chunk of the org cost that actually goes in. So I think usually organizations do plan and prepare for hard risk, and soft risks are usually overlooked. Organizations would be planning for, okay, like how they would want to go about managing their fundraising, how they would want to go about managing their finance, any unfortunate events or something like that. But soft risks are usually overlooked, and in case if it is not taken care of or kept in check, it can be fatal and can impact the overall organization's operating delivery as well, right? So, and the way to look at these soft risks would also be that they stem usually from the overall cultural component of the organization, especially when you are working with a large base of volunteers where there are multiple stakeholders that are playing in between. If the culture and the attitude is not kept in check, it can impact the overall effectiveness of the program delivery as well. As an organization, since we have been in volunteering management for about 16 years now, started back in 2006. There are a few things that I'm actually able to think on top of my head. I think like one of that would be volunteer mapping. In simple terms, to ensure that you have the right person for the right skill set, for the right intervention, depending on what are the skill set that an individual is bringing in, and what are their interest areas and growth areas. Typically, if I talk about Make a Difference in general, there are about 50,000 to 60,000 people who usually on an annual basis apply to volunteer with Make a Difference, out of which about 3,500 usually go ahead and volunteer after the screening and the various recruitment processes that are there. And then there is a upskilling that happens during the training period. So depending on the skill sets, recruiting folks, that is one thing. I think like another major risk, especially when you are working with volunteering system, is lack of volunteer participation, right? And there are multiple indicators for the same. For example, which can impact the delivery of the program and your interventions altogether. A space where you need to do constant mobilization. There is a system which is where a system has breeded in where there is a follow-up culture where you have to continuously follow up with people, with volunteers on ground, or a lack of ownership and leadership. In fact, if I talk about Make AFS, almost all the programs that we are currently running, at some point these evolved from volunteers, people who were working on ground. They felt the need that, okay, this needs to be developed, and that's how we have gone about developing our entire age transition model and entire solution meta model as well. So that is one one challenge that can breed in, which is lack of ownership and leadership and lack of meaningful participation. I think just outside this, like a few other challenges that I can think of, even at when you are working in a very decentralized environment as well, is a space where there might be a concentration of decision making, right? Even at a volunteering level, which ends up creating a lot of silos at a team level. People are not happy. There is low morale, low participation, and even like gossiping and internal conflicts that comes into play. So these are like some of those pieces. Outside that, I like few other things that I can think of would be like lack of fairness and respect, especially when somebody is committing to volunteer, and if they are not being appreciated in the right way, that can impact the org culture, what people are taking away, because these are the folks who are actually representing the organization to the outside world and are actually delivering your services to the beneficiaries on ground. Low feeling of camaraderie, and being a space where people are not feeling safe. I think like that, these are some of the challenges that the soft risks that are attached, which in turn can be fatal for any organization and can impact the program deliveries as well, while also exposing risk to the beneficiary and to the organization.
That's absolutely true, Saqib. I absolutely agree with your point. I would like to invite Smita to give her inputs for this question.
Thanks, Aishwarya. Thanks for, first of all, thank you for the introduction. And as Aishwarya nicely introduced, I am a part of eVidya Loka. And here today I represent eVidya Loka Trust. So it's a very beautiful organization that works for the cause of education for the kids who are deprived of good education in the rural and remote area. So what we do is we connect passionate volunteers across the globe, and we connect them using the intervention of technology to the kids who are in the rural and remote areas, the government school kids. So, I mean, all the programs at eVidya Loka is basically driven by the volunteers. They are the key drivers. And hence, along with the volunteers comes the softwares. So softwares that we have identified at eVidya Loka can be the selection process, right? The selecting of the volunteers. Whether they are a good fit for your NGO or not, how do you select them? How do you ensure that they are a good fit? Then comes the communication, because the volunteers at NGO, they will be communicating with the third, that are the students. So how their behavior is towards the students, how their communication is towards the student is a risk that can be identified. Then the third comes that we have to understand each volunteer has their own external work, like they have their support, they present themselves in different forums. So how they are representing your NGO, what are their experience that they are sharing about your NGO can be identified. How do you identify these risks, and how do we work on this, minimizing it, as we have to, as an NGO, come forward and think for it. So at eVidya Loka, we have a robust process of volunteers selection, volunteer onboarding, and volunteer assessment. So a very multi-layer of screening process helps us in mitigating this soft risk. And if it is done on a very initial stage, it can be reduced to a very great extent. And so when we select the volunteers, we connect with them, we understand their background, their area of interest, the time commitment, the passion that they have come with. So if it is done on a very initial phase, it can help us in reducing the soft risk. So that is done. Then along with that, you have to make sure that you are engaging with the volunteers and communicating on a very regular interval, because lack of communication and lack of engagement can lead to misunderstanding, and then lot of volunteers drop out and they don't retain. Then there comes third process is time to time assessment. Assessment of the volunteers, whether they are right fit youth selected for the role, whether they are doing justice to their role. So these are the few certain risks that can be identified, and there are some certain process by which we can mitigate this.
Yeah, that's true. There are multiple soft risks involved in volunteer management, and as Saqib and Smita said, they really affect like the organization culture, their commitment, their skills, and their enthusiasm towards volunteering. So thank you so much, Saqib and Smita. Let's move ahead to the next question. That is, how do you follow the process of connecting volunteers with short, mid, and long-term roles? For this question, I would like to invite Alicia first. Yeah.
Hi, Aishwarya. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I hope you can hear me. Yes. So thank you for the question. So at Ashra, we work with a very small set of target audience that we have. We have about 307 children and 650 community members that we work with on education, health, and nutrition. So the idea behind impactful volunteering is always maximizing the human capital that we have. And for us at Ashra, it's very important that we engage volunteers in the right direction. We ensure that they are target oriented, goal oriented, and time bound specifically. So we have three main types of volunteers that we work with. One is a short term volunteer where it's very need basis for Ashra. So if we come up with a need specifically that this is something that we need at the moment and we need somebody to fulfill that requirement of ours, is when we put it out through different channels from where we get our short-term volunteers, which are generally for a month or so. Then we have our mid-term volunteers, which are generally volunteers who we have already worked with, who we try and retain for a longer term, maybe for a project. So a very good example of this is actually somebody who had come to us through Connect4, who was actually working with our teachers on creating content, especially for our ECC program, which is our Early Childhood Care and Education program. And our teachers really liked his work. So he went ahead to organize a lot of sessions for ECC parents, where he took sessions on very sensitive issues like good touch, bad touch, different kinds of things where the teachers who had already done such sessions, could he could easily assist them with these things, which was coming from an external party. So it sort of held more value when it came from an external person. The third type of volunteer that we have are long-term volunteers who are generally through different channels, like we either get them through our social media or we get them through different volunteers who have actually worked with us in the past, maybe like our founders or different places that they contact us from, like our contact us page. So these volunteers are the ones that we retain for a year or more, and the importance of these volunteers is that they sort of create a snowball effect, especially when it comes to fundraising for Ashra. So an interesting fact about Ashra is that more than 50% of our funding comes from individual donors. And a lot of these donors are actually people who had volunteered with us in the past. So it sort of goes as a snowball effect where they actually talk to more people and also help them connect to us. And so, more people come to know about our work. And if they've worked with us, it becomes a plus point. And they would want to invest with us later. So that's a very important part of our volunteering too. The idea behind responsible volunteering is also tapping into the right crowd, and which is why 90%, more than 90% of our volunteers are young volunteers. We think the youth have great potential because they have greater networks, they are high energy, they're enthusiastic and committed to doing good work. So we also ensure that there is maximum impact through this. And through this, we also follow like a very strategic 4-step process where we identify skills. We ensure that there is regular feedback for the volunteers. We either ensure that we are giving them regular feedback and the volunteers itself are also giving us feedback. So if there is anything that our teaching team can do or our respective teams can do to work on this process, we ensure that it happens. It's a very rigorous 360-degree feedback process. We ensure that they have the liberty to branch out for retention in case they want to stay back and they want to work on different things where their skills may actually lie. We ensure that that can happen also. We give them opportunities for them to, come back to Ashra and work with us again. And the fourth important part is for us, it really helps us with fundraising when we go ahead and these volunteers, connect us to other volunteers like I already mentioned. It kind of helps with our entire fundraising process. And in short, it's like an entire 4-pronged approach that we have to helping us increase our impact. So yes.
I think Alisha shared really beautiful insights that young volunteers can do a lot of things with young brain, young ideas, and young, innovative things that they can do with your nonprofit. I would like to know what is Smita's input about this.
So at eWidyaloka, we have identified our volunteering programs in short term, medium term, and long term ways. So we identify short term programs, which is something can be done in a week's time to 10 days time. Then a medium term, which can be done in 2 weeks to 4 weeks time, and a long term program that generally takes you 3 months to 6 months of time. So with huge volunteer base with us, we also have a 50,000 plus volunteers associated with 4,000 being the active ones. We understand it's a huge spectrum, like a huge range of volunteers, starting from the students, the corporate employees, homemakers, retired professors, teachers, many professionals. So each volunteer has a different time that they can commit to, and each volunteer has different skill set and experience. Suppose a student who has come to volunteer, they might be coming in their semester break. They have the semester break in between of their exam. And they want to do something, make best use of their time. So for them, we have the offerings of a short-term and medium-term program. Like in this, we offer them different options that they can help us prepare the study materials. Like they can help us prepare some academic worksheets, something like a lesson plans, these things which help the long-term volunteers, like a long-term program. It is utilized in, it is helping the long-term programs. The medium-term programs, which ranges from 2 weeks to 4 weeks time, at with the local, we offer volunteers who can create the recorded videos, recorded lessons, and these recorded lessons we are using it to do a television broadcasting where the schools are not available, students cannot study digitally. So we have a television broadcast. Then we have our own app where we uses the study materials prepared by the volunteers who are doing the short-term programs. So, and the long-term program, which requires 3 months to 6 months of time commitment, is where the volunteers they spend 2 weeks per 2 hours per week time, and for long term, that is 3 months to 6 months. It is where the volunteers connect with the kids virtually in the government school kids, and they teach them the academic subjects. So for this, we require a longer commitment. So for this, we require professionals who look for a longer term volunteering. Suppose the homemakers or the retired professors, they generally, as compared to the students and the corporate employees, they can give more time to the volunteering programs. So for them, we offer generally the long term, that's the teaching programs to them. So we have to connect with each volunteer. We have to understand the time commitment that they have, the interest level, the experience level. We have to understand from the volunteer side. And then accordingly, we do the offerings of the programs. And then out of the offerings that we make, the volunteers select whichever suits them best as per the time and the skill set that they have. This is how we define the programs, and this is how the volunteer selects. So you have to understand the volunteers, basically the volunteers' time that they are ready to give, the volunteers' preferences, the criteria that they meet. So all that has to be defined in the very initial state, and accordingly a program should be selected.
Absolutely correct. I think volunteers' time commitment and their skills plays very important role in engaging any volunteer. Thank you so much, Smita and Alisha. Moving to the next question, we discussed a lot about like soft risk. We discussed about like their programs, how they are managing volunteers. Now, this is something that would be really helpful for all our participants to understand how they can engage volunteers in new ways. So my next question is related to that only. What are the ways that are helping you engage the volunteers in new way? It could be young volunteers as well. So what are your takes on this? Anyone, Sakib, Smita, Alisha can go ahead. Sakib, you are on
Sorry, I
mute.
didn't realize that. Thank you. I think I can take this up, Aishwarya. I think this is a very common question that is usually asked as to how do you go about engaging volunteers. The way to look at it would be it cannot be just looked from one lens. It's a function of multiple things which ensure that a volunteer is feeling safe and they're able to progress in their careers and even within the organization. And I think like with respect to the young folks, there is a very strong notion that usually exists at society at large, that young people are difficult to work with and people do not take them very seriously. And I think like over the past 16 years of our working with such people, we have been able to challenge that to a great extent. Make a Difference on an annual basis works with more than 3,500 such volunteers who commit to about 15 hours on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis to the organization, right? And a lot of them actually stays within the system. About 60% of volunteers retain in the system, and even the ones who actually move out of the system, they are like an active flag bearer for the organization and are like an active support to the children and youth that Make a Difference work with. In fact, I think like the way to look at it from a very org specific point of view would also be that these young people are also the future in a lot of ways, where they are also exploring opportunities, where they're also exploring different sectors, understanding what are the challenges, So as an organization, how we look at it is that and in fact, I'm actually one of those product as well who has come out of that volunteering journey, right? That MAD is like or the organization is like a trampoline bag, airbag, on which it's up to you what is the potential you would want to achieve. The organization has the capacity and capability to provide you with whatever resources are required to achieve whatever heights or targets you want to aim for. I think like and the underlying principle for like a good volunteer engagement would be that, especially while you are dealing with young folks, would be that how we are actually tapping onto that potential young energy, right? And that also becomes like a function of multiple things. One, what is although like somebody is working for a cause, it's a beautiful thing to do, but what is also the value that they are actually taking away while working? That becomes a function of the competency building, right? And personal growth. At a professional level, even when you are while you are studying, what are the transferable skill sets that you are actually able to take while working in the organization, either in the same sector or even anywhere else. Those transferable skill sets, I think that becomes one function, and also like upskilling volunteers by giving them responsibilities and ownership, which includes like providing them with intellectual challenges and also ensuring that we are empowering them to solve them. I think like outside that, another function that plays out very beautifully would be the leveling system as to within the organization, how you're also level up, right? So there are dozen of volunteering role within the organization, which is about one which is about like as a volunteer, you are working either direct on the program delivery, or you're ensuring that the programs are delivered beautifully by either fundraising, managing finance, maintaining relationships, doing comms and communications for the organization. There are multiple roles that you can play depending on what are your growth areas and what you want to do. But outside that as well, within the organization, how you can actually level up, right? So about after completing a year of volunteering with Make a Difference, about 1/3 of the volunteers go ahead and becomes the fellow, which is like a city managerial sort of a layer. Would not want to call it a managerial layer, but more of an enabling layer. People who have taken up more responsibility to ensure that the operations are being carried out. And another volunteering layer to that would be like people who have taken up a strategist role, who are also enabling the voice of the volunteers, who are enabling the voice of the fellows, and who are also enabling working as a sideways bandwidth to the full-timer. And mind you, I'm talking about 30 full-timers working with multiple layers, and about 3,500 to 4,000 youth on a yearly basis. I think alongside that, what also helps is that how you are actually also enabling a rich culture at a volunteering level. For MAD, there are certain values that we hold very tightly across, which is sense of family, leadership through ownership, and cause above self. So everybody holds it very tightly, and it's a very rich curated culture in a very local context as well, that everybody is agreeing to it, and there is a congruence for that. So I think that's one piece. Now, if I was to talk about from a little engagement aspect point of view, I think as an organization, you can't afford to box yourself. At all points of time, you need to evolve, and you need to be either at par or ahead with the trend, with the ongoing trend, especially while you are working with young folks. And I think like at MAD, we have been able to do that to a great extent. In fact, when I think about like using platforms and channels like for volunteer management or engagement as well, like when Orkut was around, Make a Difference was actively using that. When Facebook was around, like when it was a thing, like Make a Difference was actively using it. In fact, like even this platform Zoom that we are currently on, we started using it back in 2016. We realized that it's a much more cost-effective way. We can engage people in a much more beautiful way. There is a space for cross communication, people to come together, collaborate, and all those pieces. So we started using Zoom, and our entire onboarding and recruitment also happened on these platforms. And right now, I think with the ongoing trend for example, right now at Make a Difference, we are recruiting volunteers, right? So Instagram Reels is like a new thing out there especially for the young folks who are using it. So we are actively using these platforms to its full potential, and it's working out really well. And I think the one thing that usually comes out of it also is that even when the pandemic hit, right, it did not disrupt our operations massively, because of the capacity and the agility that was across one at a volunteering layer, and even at a little managerial layer, which is the full-time layer. We were able to easily do that transition and move to the online platforms to carry out the operations and deliver onto the similar or the same impact that we have been doing.
Great. Thank you so much.
I will add to what Saki was saying. So engagement is very important to keep your volunteers motivated while doing their work. And it is also helping to bring back the volunteers who have once done the volunteering and goes up. If you keep them engaged, there are high chances that they come back. So at eWith the Loka, we have two types of engagement functions that we do. One is the programmatic intervention. It is like once a volunteer is being for their role, we train them, we orient them for the capacity building. So this is the programmatic interventions or the engagement that the volunteers get involved into. And then we have a specified team of BRM, relation management. So here this team basically all over the year around, we keep on doing some engagement activities by which volunteers feel that they are engaged, they are communicated well and is in relation with the team members, the NGO members. So as I talk about few events, we conduct Independence Day, we conduct Volunteers Day, we conduct Teachers Day, Children's Day. Then we have the musical events that we conduct for volunteers. Any event webinars that we do, we make sure that all the volunteers who have been associated current or in the past is invited. Not only that, we keep on sending them the monthly emailers, newsletters, by which to keep them updated what is happening at our NGO, so that they are aware of the different programs that is coming up in case if they would like to come back again and volunteer again. Then we have around the year, at the end of the year, we have our annual that is Rubaru, wherein we identify the volunteer champions. So whoever in the particular current year who has done the best in their role or who has done their volunteering very efficiently, I mean, gone beyond the role that was assigned. So like one of the example I would like to quote here is one of our volunteers. She was teaching in a particular center. She was a virtual teacher. But not only teaching she went beyond, she saw that the school students are sitting on the floor. So she contributed for the infra of the school. She arranged the desk and chair, and seeing to her, many other volunteers were doing the same thing. They're contributing other than the role. So all these volunteers we recognize, we reward, and this is how we engage them in the different activities and events around the year. We also have different groups, helpline, 24/7 helpline, wherein volunteers, if they have any issue, they can connect with the local members. Or we have a certain groups where the volunteers connect with the volunteers, share their experiences. Then we do the city chapter meets. So chapter meets is when a volunteer, whoever is from a particular city or for a particular language that they are teaching. So like even the volunteers are not only from India, they are from abroad also. So any volunteers, like suppose the volunteers who are teaching in the West Bengal centers, so we call them for a specific program like chapter meet. We call the volunteers, they connect with the beneficiary connect with the volunteers, and they share their experiences. Like it's a good engagement that the volunteers get in touch with. So these are various short programs that we do around the year to keep our volunteers engaged. So these are the engagement programs that we follow at Loka.
Thank you so much, Smita, for sharing such a wonderful insight. Alicia?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Smita, and thank you, Sakib. They were very insightful the points that you had put across. So at Ashra, since we are a smaller organization also, we at a point of time, we work with around 30 to 40 volunteers at a point of time where they could be short-term, mid-term, or long-term. And we definitely try to ensure that our volunteers are constructively engaged. That's very important for us. because we do not, we also want to ensure that there is growth for even the volunteers it's themselves who come into the organization. So we also ensure that those opportunities are given to them where they have the creative freedom to explore their talents and skills and to branch within the organization as such. So we have a very thorough guidance process that we follow with them, where an induction is done with the volunteers, of course, and then there is an induction done with the particular team that the volunteer will be working with. Roles and responsibilities are explained very clearly to the volunteer, and we ensure that everything has to be target oriented, it has to be goal oriented, and it most importantly it has to be time bound. If they are working within a month, it has to be ensured that the task has to be completed within a month. So we do ensure that our team takes up and helps the particular volunteer specifically in whatever they need, and they do definitely have the creative freedom to evolve however they would like in the project. The idea is that it should also be a rewarding experience for them, where they go back with not just a tag that they have volunteered at this so and so place. They also go back with a memory with an experience where they would also want to come back and retain this, and maybe come back and help us out when we reach out to them tomorrow. So it's very important at Ashra that there is a 360-degree feedback process where we take feedback from the volunteers from day one as to how things are going and how engaged they are with the activity. If there is something else they would like to take on in terms of roles and responsibilities allocated, is there anything that we think that we can work on towards making their experience more enjoyable and their experience more better. So that way we ensure that the volunteers are engaged. We also ensure that they are engaged with events within Ashra, because Ashra also works as a school. So we also do hold events, and the good thing is during COVID, even though we have moved everything online, we actually got to expand our volunteering preferences, because we could finally work with volunteers who are actually in other cities also, and even in other countries for that matter. So we don't like to limit our opportunities and resources, and we don't want to do that for our volunteers either. So if there are volunteers who are approaching us from another country at a point of time, we definitely ensure, even though especially through COVID, we have ensured that they can support us in any way possible wherever sitting wherever they are. So that has been a very important part of engagement, where it's very important to make the volunteer feel needed and wanted in the organization, right? So that was one of our strategies that we had identified and a couple of years back, and we have gone through with this, and it has worked very well for us also in terms of retaining volunteers, and in terms of increasing our volunteering outreach also. So yes.
Great, that's wonderful. I think you guys have shared such a wonderful insight and wonderful details about how you can work with volunteers. What are the things that can make any non-profit engage volunteers in a better way? So yeah, thank you so much for that. Moving to the next question, a lot of times we have been hearing that we have multiple people in the team, so volunteer is not connected with this person or something or the other, where we feel that the communication is missing. So I just want to know what are your thoughts about the communication plan, or what should be the plan of action? And this question is also for Sakib, Smita, and Alisha. So whoever wants to go can go first.
I think I can take this. Is that okay? So we have a very open communication plan. We try and keep all our channels open for communication. Ashra as an organization also, we are very tight with our entire communication that goes on within our team specifically. We have weekly meetings regarding everything that goes on at Ashra. So we also try and include our volunteers as much as we can in that. So we ensure that they have an open channel of communication. Of course, it's a very straightforward channel. We have one person responsible for volunteers at Ashra, and that could be me. But that volunteer could be working with multiple teams. So the feedback will always be taken by me, and then I would be translating that feedback for the entire team as such, and we would see on how to work about it as such. And so that's exactly how it happens with the team itself. The team would be coming to me with feedback. So there is one designated person who is handling volunteers and handling any kind of feedback or any kind of training that is happening for either the team team or either the volunteers. So the keyword in this being that we need to keep all our channels of communication open. The volunteer should feel that they can approach us and talk to us at any point of time. It should be a two-way process. There's always a give and take with this, because it's human capital and we are actually working, they are working for us for free. It's not, we're not paying them for their skills either. So we have to ensure that they have a good experience within the organization. Having said that, we do sometimes face the softer risks of volunteering also, where there are deliverables which are not achieved. But we try not to let this mar our experience, and we do definitely try and overcome it to the best of our abilities. But having said that, we do have a very clear induction plan for a volunteer, and to the exit, what happens, it goes via an entire regular process that we are doing. And we are very particular about our deliverables as such. So when we say that we are giving them an internship letter or a letter of recommendation or a certificate, we very clearly mention roles and responsibilities in that. We start by mentioning the name, their designation, the roles and responsibilities that they were appointed for, the roles and responsibilities that they completed during the duration, which might be way more than what happened when they came into the organization, how we evaluated them, and how their experience was entirely in the organization. And we also try and add a personal touch to it. But this is also possible because we are working with a lesser number of volunteers at a point of time rather than other organizations who are high on scale. But having said that, we try and accommodate that. We accommodate everything that the volunteer has done and achieved in that 1 month or in that 1 year in the organization. And we try to make it as detailed as possible because this is a give and take process, and the volunteer needs to be able to, use that as recognition, or as, because it's an upliftment of their skills. They might have also taken away a lot that they have learned and in our organization, and we want that to reflect in our letter. So that is very clear on our letter of recommendation or an internship letter, and what the deliverables will be from our side, from Ashra as an organization to the volunteer. So yes.
Great. Sakib?
Sure. Thank you so much, Alicia, for putting it out so nicely. I think just this particular point, I think communication does play a critical role and is actually agnostic of the scale or the kind of organization, be it a for-profit or a non-profit. It plays a super critical role when it comes to effectiveness of the program. And that is irrespective of how strong your programs or frameworks are. If you're not able to communicate it well, if you're not able to align folks together, it will breed massive inefficiency and ineffectiveness with respect to the organization's delivery. And so the way we see it is that especially while we are working with volunteers or multiple stakeholders within the organization or outside the organization, there are different stakeholders, or which includes volunteers, also need different mode of communication, right? Different channels to engage with, and this also serves as a platform where we are able to bring goal clarity, or there is a proper understanding as to what is the roadmap of the organization, how we are going about it, what's the strategy to it. That's one thing. Outside that, there is a yearly calendar that is in place, which talks about, okay, at what time, what is the communication that needs to go into the volunteers. And there is a regular feedback loops that are always open and are actively closed with the volunteers. This also includes how you are also able to plug in the matrix, the milestones, to maintain the transparency, and at the same time inspiring people by bringing out the success indicators or the success stories, and also a strategy to and a space to closing out loops with volunteers, as I mentioned. I think the other way to look at it is that with respect to L&D, there is a one technical side of it where we are actively building out capacity for the volunteers by upskilling them, by providing them with avenues and all those things. But with proper communication, there also brings in a function of capabilities as well, where people are able to collectivize and visualize together towards a common goal or an objective. That also directly influences the overall effectiveness of the organization. And as I mentioned before, also while engaging the volunteers, also that particular question, that there are multiple platforms platforms that we are using for the same. So it's like when you have a happy set of people who have bought into your vision, who have understanding, who knows how you're going to get to it, and at the same time you have effective outcomes for the same.
Wonderful. Smita?
Yeah, so I believe good communication is very important for any NGO. The more better communication is being done, the more aligned the volunteers are with your cause. So it is, different level of communication that you have to. It's not just when a volunteer shows interest, you just connect and you tell them what is their role here. So there is certain, different types of communication. First, you have to identify which suits your NGO best. So like it's a emails that you can communicate, or it's a social media post that you can communicate. You can do a phone call, a video call, anything that you find your NGO is more suitable to. So at eWith-the-Loka, we have a different layer of communications. We start it with the different posts on the social medias, and whenever a volunteer registers with us, we do a welcome call. We first tell them, thank you that you have shown interest in our cause or in our program. And this is how it starts, the communication level starts. Then we have a face-to-face personal interaction with the volunteers, just to understand their background, their skill set, their interest, and to tell them there to communicate our NGO, what we are doing, what are our cause to them. We do a personal level of communication. Then once this is done, then we have a training sessions and the onboarding sessions with the volunteers, wherein we connect with them, we orient them, and this is how we communicate what is the role and responsibility we expect from the volunteers. We communicated there. Post which, when the volunteer is in turn with us, we have different modes of communication, like any query if a volunteer is facing, they have a specified members that they can reach out to communicate for. And then at the end of when they end their term with us, we communicate our gratitude towards them, whether it's a thank you note or a certificate, any way that we can say a thank you to them. We just communicate our gratitude towards them. So a communication is very important, because if you don't communicate with the volunteers well, there are high chances that they misunderstood your cause, and if there are chances that they might not turn up at all. They just register, and if you don't communicate well, they might drop off. And then there is a certain specific time also that you have to follow. It's not if a volunteer shows interest today and after a month you are communicating with them. No, it should be a certain specific time. Like the sooner the communication starts, the better it is for volunteers to connect with your cause. So these are the specific things that while the communicating with the volunteers should be considered. And as per the NGO, we should choose our best ways of communication that suits our volunteer best. So this is how we can.
Great. Thank you so much to all our speakers. They have shared such a wonderful insights about managing volunteers, managing the communication plan, how you can deal with volunteers in a new way, and much more. So we are done with our questions, but we have got few questions in the chat box, which I would like to highlight it now. The first question is how to build capacity into volunteer program without slipping into regular training sessions. So
I think I can try answering that question. Whosoever asked, please, if you would want to expand on it, feel free to do that. So I think like it becomes so it doesn't necessarily like how traditionally L&D, how it has been that, okay, you need to go through a formal training and all those things. There are a lot of creative ways also that you can actually go about it, which is also in a way of how you can go about engaging your volunteers as well, right? One example of that would be like how you are able to gamify the learning process as well for any volunteer, which, for example, like in the form of role plays, if or in the form of case studies. One thing that that we actively try to do is that do active role plays and case studies, and it also depends on what is the kind of learning that you are looking at for that particular set of volunteers to have, and also like setting the right culture to it. So like it's like, which also becomes like a function of how motivated your volunteers are towards something like that, and it needs to be curated in that aspect as well. If you think about it, what is the outcome that you are looking at achieving, and what is the culture that you would want to achieve? For example, uh, like if you are in a space where there needs to be a lot of L&D and all those things that need to happen, then your culture needs to have components of pro learnings, professionalism, and all those things. Those needs to be like the top priority of that the culture. It can be like for a time bound or until you are meeting that outcome, but I think like that can be like one way to go about it, included with, provided that you are also able to make it fun while somebody is doing it. I hope I answered the question, whosoever asked that.
Great, thank you. So moving to the next question, how do we deal with volunteers who sign up to lead initiatives but struggle with prioritizing organization work over other personal work?
Okay, I think I'll take this question, Ashwarya. So, as an NGO, we also understand that this is volunteering, and this is something volunteers are giving their time and their, which is very valuable. So, as an NGO, also we don't expect them to, leave their major work or their professional work and then come volunteering for us. We set up our programs in such a way that only hardly 1 or 2 hours a week, or maximum, or sometime on weekends, that you can contribute to our program. So this is how we understand, we do the offerings and we reach out to the volunteers in same way, we communicate. So when a volunteer come and sometimes after starting or committing, they feel that they are not able to manage the time, anytime they can come and talk to the respective persons from the NGO. And I'm sure there are ways that is, worked out. Like suppose if it is maybe after the working hours, they can take it up, or on the weekends that they can take it up. That can be managed anytime. They can just go and talk to the respective NGO person, and this can be managed. This should not be an issue. And anytime NGOs, we put our program in such a way that volunteers can take it up after their working hours or after their.
I would also like to add to this. As an organization, we also understand that volunteers are generally giving time out of their own free hours. So we have to respect that in a way. So what we do is we work backwards every time we do our induction. We only take up volunteers who we know will be able to dedicate adequate time to the task that has been assigned. So for instance, if the task requires 10 hours a month, it could be for content creation or anything, we do not really put restrictions on when it has to be done, but we ensure that the person can dedicate at least 3 hours a week, whether it's on the weekends or on the weekdays. If it's a more time bound task in the sense that it's maybe for training teachers, we ensure that the teachers themselves will be free during that, and we set up an induction with the teachers itself for the volunteer itself to gauge to whether they will be able to complete the task or not. So even assessing the volunteer skills is very important, sort of a screening process to even ensure that they can do the task and they can commit to the task. So there are certain things where we ensure that it happens more strictly, but for certain tasks where it could be like for a year of volunteering, where the task might not be something that is needed immediately in the next 1 week or the next 1 month, which is when we give the volunteer the freedom to complete the task at their pace. So that is generally for our long-term volunteers who might have a difference in time, maybe time hours, or are staying in another part of the country or staying in another part of the world. So we do ensure that it fits within their mandate also, in a way to be able to for them to commit completely and fully. That is one way we actually also screen volunteers to see if they are up to the task, whether they have the time on their hands to be able to commit to it also. So in a way.
Yeah, I think that is very important to understand like how much time bandwidth that they have, and by structuring your program that way could really help you organize volunteers better way. So I absolutely agree on that. We have a few more questions. Are there any behavioral changes that are faced? If so, how are they handled, especially in online mode with volunteers? Yeah, whoever would like to go ahead can
I think like I can try answering that question. So specifically, I think like one, like we are also learning and understanding like how to work in an online environment. I think 2020 was a year about learning and understanding those things. But from a behavioral point of view, I think like there are certain policies that are in place that which everybody needs to be mindful about. And when we talk about like how you are meaningfully engaging or meaningfully participating as an individual, even while you are volunteering, we hold that very tightly, even in like in an online environment. So the policy is one. Specific to very MAT context, there are certain policies which is like your code of conduct while you are while you're in the professional capacity of a MAT volunteer, that is there, and the other behavioral challenges which would be with respect to while you're engaging with the beneficiary, which in this case would be a child for Make a Difference, then ensuring that you are following those code of conduct. And outside that, I think like certain practices that we tend to hold, which is like best practices but not like mandates, which would be that while you are on call trying to be on video, if possible, being in an environment which is conducive enough for you to have a conversation. So these are kind of some certain best practices that are there that we keep into check. And in case if there is like a red flag with respect to policy grade aspect, then we do take actions on the same.
Yes, that's correct. And I think we all agree with that, that we all should have policy at place so that whenever we are communicating with volunteers, we are clear that this is the kind of policies that we follow, and even they are aware that they need to work accordingly with the NGO team. Absolutely right. Um, Moving to the next question. So this question is specifically for Saqib. What is the duration of volunteering for programs in MAD, and what are the attrition levels?
Yeah, I think like for anybody who volunteers with Make a Difference, the expected duration is that they would continue for one academic year, because this involves directly working with a child or a youth from a childcare institution. So that is like a commitment that is there with an hourly commitment which is attached to it as well. About, as I mentioned, about 12 to 15 hours on a monthly basis. That's a commitment. Attrition level during the year, attrition level is about 3 to 4%. End of the year, attrition level is about 20%, about 15 to 20%, if I'm getting it correctly.
Okay, thank you. Now the next question is for Alicia. What goes into the orientation of volunteers?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Ravi. So we have two comprehensive stages of orientation, where the first orientation is always with me, where a lot of volunteers who come to us are not aware exactly of the work that Ashra is doing. And even if they are aware of a bit, maybe not to the extent of it. So the first stage is always me orienting them about our goals, our policies, and whether their needs fit and align with our needs too. So that is a very important stage, because that's the first stage of screening also for us, where we gauge whether the volunteer is a good fit or not. So initially it starts with me explaining everything about Ashra and what the role needs and requires, because in some cases I'm also given a requirement that this is what the role is for, but I might not know the 100% extent of what it is, because it could be for the teaching team or it could be for any other team that we have at Ashra. So I would give the volunteer a brief, and I would ask the volunteer exactly how much time they can commit to the process and what are the hours that they can put in, how long they can be committed to the task at hand, whether it's a month, whether they would like to continue beyond that, if they are interested in exploring other avenues and options too. So in a way that also helps us with retention. So the next stage is where volunteers directly connected to the team, and they have an orientation with the team itself regarding the task that has to be completed. So it's basically a second layer of where the team will the coordinator of the team, or the respective person who is the leader of the team, will actually communicate to the person regarding their exact roles and responsibilities and the deliverables that are expected in the time frame that has been expected, and set up a schedule for whatever the activity is, whether if it's a training, a schedule with the teachers, where it is basically then from there communicated to the entire team. So then we would have a meeting with the team where the volunteer is introduced, and probably like an induction meeting with the volunteer itself, where they get to know each of the teachers or maybe each of the person who's on the particular team that they have to be working with. So then we leave it to the creative freedom of the volunteer, with how they want to take up head the task and how it has to happen and what topics they might want to include in a curriculum or in a in a training process or whatever they might. So we give that freedom to the volunteer too, because they come with their own expertise and their own life skills. So we want to incorporate that also in teaching. We don't have a fixed agenda for anything. So once that is done, then we start the feedback process where every week or so we will take feedback from all layers. The volunteer also gives feedback to the team, but primarily the feedback would come to the person who's responsible for connecting the volunteer, which is me in this case. So yeah, that is our general screening process. And we do have a exit interview also as such, that where we would thank the volunteer for the work that they've done and discuss what deliverables are there. So we try and ensure that this happens for each and every volunteer that is there, because it's a very important part of the tying up or the closure process that as it is. And we want to ensure that they have gone with the best experience too. So yeah.
That's correct. Thank you so much, Alicia. I hope the speakers are fine with 5 more minutes, as we have 3 more questions and we can wrap up the webinar. Yeah. Okay. So the next question is for Smita. In the times of COVID, where volunteering roles are turning online, what are the challenges faced in engaging them and how are they tackled? Also, an organization like eVidyaloka, where volunteers are online teachers since inception, how do you mobilize them?
Correct. So in the COVID times, correct, the trend for volunteering has increased a lot, and we've got very good number of responses from the volunteers to showing interest. So mobilizing volunteer is not difficult when you know what your criteria set is and you're communicating the same in the different forums. So if we like want the volunteers who know the regional language, like for a teacher, it is very important for us that a volunteer knows to speak, read, and write in their mother tongue, because we connect with the kids from the rural and remote background. So whenever anywhere we are advertising about our programs, we make sure that we publish this in a very clear manner, that what our requirement is, and then we are getting the volunteers in the same way. So it is how you communicate about your program, how you advertise about your program. Getting volunteers for your program is not very difficult. It is right set of information that has to go out, and then yeah, so it is not difficult to get volunteers if you have a right set of information going. So that is one of the very important thing. Then when if your volunteers are coming in, make sure that you connect with them. And you clear out that what the expectation from the volunteer is for a specific program. So if that is also met, that is also clear out, it is easier for us also as an NGO to get in volunteer to their role. It's easier for volunteers also to start volunteering for whatever program they have selected.
Great. Thank you so much, Smita. So this question sounds very interesting. How do you track the productive time spent by volunteer? If any volunteer fails to do it, what is your plan of action to complete that task or assignment? What was asked by any organization?
Sorry, can you please come back on the question?
Yes, I shall repeat the question for Aishwarya. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, I do.
All right. So yes. Aishwarya, you there? All right. Yeah, she's back.
Can you hear me?
Aishwarya, we can hear you now.
Yeah. Sorry, there
Could
was
you
some
please?
internet issue. Yeah. So the question is, how do you track the productive time spent by volunteer? If any volunteer fails to do it, what is your plan of action to complete that task?
Okay, so I'll take it. So I think all in NGO we have a system or a mechanism of tracking volunteering hours. So at eVidyaloka also we have a system named Jupiter, wherein it's a software where all the volunteers who come with us has to register on that portal. So when they register, we have all the roles defined there, all the classes that they take is marked there, the attendance, the volunteers, number of volunteering hours contributed. So all that is tracked in that mechanism. This is how like each NGO, I mean, all the NGOs are having some or the other mechanism system of tracking the volunteering hours, be it manually or be it through a system. So this is how we track the volunteering hours at eVidya Loka. Whoever the volunteers who are coming in, they select their role, and accordingly, as per their role, the task is assigned on the system. And whenever they complete, they submit it or they complete their classes, it gets tracked. So at the end of the year or at the end of the month, whenever we want to see particular each volunteer how many working hours they have contributed, we can take out the data from that system. So it's a very well mannered system, Jupyter, that we follow at eVidya.
Okay, Saqib, Alicia.
Sure, I can build on top of what Smita was saying. So, like as Smita mentioned, that there exists like a volunteer management system in which like the credit or the participation of the volunteers are actually tracked, and like at Make a Difference, there is also like a function of substitution in case if somebody is not available, then somebody else can actually a trained professional or a trained volunteer can actually go ahead and substitute for for the said volunteer. But alongside that, there is also like a credit policy that we follow at Make a Difference to ensure that everybody who is there in the system, they are actively participating, and we do not have any drag factors in the system, which also breeds a lot of inefficiency. So there is a credit mechanism in case if somebody is not participating and they are hitting below a certain credit, which is like once they go into like a negative credit, there is like a developmental conversation that happens with the individual, and which is more of a growth area to understand how we can support them better to go ahead with the program to continue or to do better. Otherwise, like then there is an exit conversation that happens with the individual if they are not able to commit to, or they are not able to hold on to the required number of hours that particular profile requires for. I hope I answered the question.
Yes. Thank you so much. Alicia, would you like to add?
Yes. So, very important question. How do we ensure that the volunteers are committing to the task? And if they aren't, what is our backup plan? So at Asher, like I said, because we work with around 30 to 40 volunteers at a point of time. So what we do is we try and ensure that they are up to completing the task. So we also ensure that for the tasks that are very important, we hire more than one volunteer for it. So in the case that we do not, it's sort of a backup plan where if the first volunteer is not performing up to the required capacity or has issues with in terms of committing to it, so we ensure that there is another person at hand who can either assist them or take over the task at least if the volunteer cannot commit to the process. So that's one way we ensure, and we do not ever have 100% dependency on our volunteers. We also ensure that 20% of that task can actually be taken on and can be completed by teachers themselves, or if the volunteer is for me myself, because we always ensure that the entire workload of it is not put on the volunteer, because we also want to not put 100% dependency on the volunteer, not because of performance issues, but because of the fact that even we want quality outcomes, so we have to be there in the entire guidance process of it. So there is some inputs of the person in charge which is actually going into the task of the volunteer. The volunteer is never performing the task alone. So there is a constant feedback system. So in case the volunteer is cannot commit to it and has told us that I am not being able to put in the required time, either we do give them a particular deadline where we tell that this is when the task has to be completed, and if it's not done, then we do, like Sakib had also mentioned, have an exit call with the person where we say that I'm sorry, but we're going to have to move to other options right now. But we try not to leave it at a negative note again, because of the fact that maybe that volunteer could not commit to that due to some personal issue or the other. So we try not to bring any hard feelings into it. We always want to ensure that they can come back and participate in a time when it is convenient to them. So we do keep our backup options there, and we also ensure that there is no 100% dependency on the volunteer.
Yeah, I think it's very important the kind of insights that we have gathered today's webinar. webinar is really, really good. And can you hear me? Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, Ashwarya.
Okay, yeah, sorry. There was some issue. Yeah, so today we gathered such a beautiful and insightful information about managing volunteers, dealing with them, dealing with their day-to-day activity, and how you can engage them in a better way.